We have a showcase of Penny Dreadful. It's a young literary journal edited and produced by young, energetic editors, and they are presenting 5 contributors to the journal tonight. We're going to have one of the editors come up and talk about the Penny Dreadful first, their raison d'etre, their editorial policy and so on, and then we're going to hear from each of the 5 readers in turn. Thank you very much.
Do I have to lean into the microphone here, or can you hear me?
Perfect, just...
Cool. Even in the back?
Yeah.
Great. I can't actually see the back, so I presume you can. So, thank you very much. My name is Marc O'Connell, and I'm the co-publisher and co-editor of the Penny Dreadful magazine. And I am going to begin. This sheet actually has nothing on it. It's here to sort of prop to make me look like I'm intelligent and I've written something down in advance. I'm going to begin by explaining a brief history of the Penny Dreadful magazine. So, it was begun in 2013, well technically 2012, by myself and John Keating, who's my co-publisher and co-editor here in Cork. At the time, we used to drink a lot and write, and we couldn't find anyone who would actually publish anything we'd written, which was their problem and not ours. So we decided the best way around this would be to screw everyone and start our own damn literary magazine where we publish no one but ourselves. Unfortunately, that didn't work. So we began acting as an open. We began initially photocopying a sort of folded together magazine, which was about this big. I attempted to actually print a load of the old folded ones out and bring in about 50 of them tonight, but it turns out we've lost all of them, so that's now lost to history. But we began distributing this aimlessly around Cork in a sort of a vague way. But then, bizarrely, people began emailing us, which was completely uncalled for, so we accidentally became a submissions-based literary magazine. So we figured, well, people would probably pay for this, and it turns out they occasionally do. So we began publishing with our first issue, and we're now on our we're currently accepting submissions for our 7th issue. I should also point out that our assistant editor, Caithan Leahy, who joined us he's waving his hands in the air, you can't see him, but who joined us in 2014 is here as well. So our editorial policy is that we don't have an editorial policy. We have absolutely no preconceived notions of what we receive in our submissions pile. There's literally no theme, there's no house style, there isn't anything. We work on a policy of what's good is probably good. So, I like the fact that there's one person laughing. It's really helpful. It makes me feel like Jerry Murphy. If you're into one of his readings, he always has like his own laughing person in the back. What was I saying? Oh yes, we don't have an editorial policy. So I've completely lost track of what I was saying. We publish anything in a poetical sense, from extreme concrete form poetry to very, very formal sonnet and sestina-based poetry. There's literally nothing we won't publish. And I don't mean that in a crazy way. What else is there to say about us? We're generally biannual. We've begun establishing ourselves as a small publishers based here in Cork. Thus far, we've published 2 poetry titles of Dylan Brennan. His first book was published with us at the end of 2014. Called Blood Oranges, and this last November we published our 2nd title, Strange Country, by Kimberly Campanello. Interestingly enough, both of these poets are people who published with us in our first issue, and so we built a relationship with them as a journal publisher over a number of years, to a point where we developed manuscripts of them that we eventually brought out as books, which is something we hope to do again in the future. We also do a lot of stuff with short fiction and stuff, but it's beyond sort of the remit of a poetry thing to go on about that excessively. Maybe when we're in the Short Story Festival in a couple of months, we can talk about it then, but perhaps not. So what we're going to do tonight is give you the very, very basic introduction to us that I just gave you, and we're going to get our readers to read for you, because they're much better at explaining what we're about than we are, because we don't write anything good. So that's about 4 people. We're going to begin with our first reader, who is Sarah Clancy, and her biography she sent us is really long, and I meant to edit it earlier on, so I'm going to attempt to do this on the spot. So you're going to see an actual example of on-the-spot copy editing, which is the kind of on-the-cusp amazing things that we do with the Penny Dreadful. So, Sarah Clancy is a page and performance poet from Galway. Her most recent collection, The Truth and Other Stories, was published by Salmon Poetry in 2014. She has 2 previous collections to her name, Stacey and Mechanical Bull, Ludwig Press Belfast, and Thanks for Nothing Hippies, Salmon Press 2012. She has been placed or shortlisted in several of Ireland's most prestigious written poetry competitions, including the Patrick Kavanagh Award. In performance poetry, she won the Court International Festival of Literature Grand Slam Championships in 2011. And, I'm doing the copy editing.
That's grand, Mark.
Mark, just
That's
bear.
loads.
Sarah,
Yes, and Sarah Clancy.
Evening, everyone who I can't see, and thanks very much, Mark, and the whole Penny Dreadful team. I love the Penny Dreadful, and I love coming to Cork, so thanks, Pat Cotter, and sorry for giving you nervous moments by being a little bit late. I decided that I was going to start with poems that haven't been in any book so far, so hopefully they won't be too raw and tedious for you. This first poem that I'm going to start with, I'll give you the title at the end and you'll see why. Feel the dead heat of the quietening street. See the early evening houses and the shutters on the shops. Look at the row of high-rise balconies and their aloe vera plants. See this door, and behind it, the tile-floored hallway. Look at the outdoor shoes abandoned carelessly by going about their business feet. Look in here, see shelves full of books, and the loose-skinned hands that choose one, thumb it, and put it back. Hear the sigh as someone older sits down, and now the telltale evenness of breath that tells you sleep is near. Shh, now, come in here. See the saucepans, turmeric, ginger, onions, and the glistening guts of something. See the strong-backed person cooking, her flush, blood-orange cheeks. Over here, see the empty good room with photos of the girl's first day at school, her plump-armed prize for maths. See her 7-year-old gap-toothed grin, and now, in the bathroom this very minute, see her neck nape exposed and older as she kneels beside the bath. See the henna swirl maroonish in the water, then disappear. See the soles of her bare feet, her calf muscles, and how her skirt is caught in behind her knees. From the street below, listen to the overheating engine of her teenage brother's car as he tries to park it. See his sinewy biceps strain while he reverses, his slim thighs pressed against the seat. See on his unlined forehead the freshness of glistening beads of sweat. Now watch him slam the car door and turn this way while the lazy street cat looks up unimpressed before settling back to lick itself. Then freeze all this and think of it, blown to smithereens. All this is what a bomb hits. I'm going to read the next poem. I haven't read it before, but I noticed, and I think it is really useful and exceptional that the Poetry Festival here is dedicated to Ashraf Fayyad, who has been facing the death penalty in Saudi Arabia. This is a poem not about his case, but it's a poem about something similar. I think it's very difficult sometimes, for me anyway at least, to remember, because I want to trust states and institutions. It's very difficult for me to remember how most of the atrocities that we know of have been committed by states. So this is a poem about that. It was actually provoked by the killings of students in Mexico in Ayotzinapa, but it's called The Problem with Authority. There's a little subtitle that's No se olvida fue el Estado, and that was a placard that was going around Mexico that said, don't forget, it was the state that did it. So this is a poem about that. Arms into torso, my limbs melted, long before I heard of Tunisia, of Ben Ali or Mohammed Bouazizi. Before I knew anything about economics, I twisted in distressed white bed linen, whilst in the cane fields my skin wheeled from Irish overseers' whips. I was spread-eagled over hot car metal on a million occasions, had my hands up way before Ferguson. Before Michael Brown was gunned down, I dreamt it. And in Bagram, old Blighty's techniques made me so homesick that when I woke in Abu Ghraib facing Lindy England's camera, I almost missed my blindfold. Since before thumb-sucking finished, I took part in progress. That's what the bosses called it, when my young fingers blistered in NAFTA sweatshops making toys for other children, while my mother risked her cheap life walking home through Juarez, where your worst prospect is La Policia. In Ayotzinapa, I suffocated from petrol and black fumes, but I found my grave chock full with corpses showing clear signs of torture. And because the cemeteries and city dumps were filled already with Bloody Sunday victims, with the locked out children of the Nabka, with Ken Sarawiwa and his many, many sisters, they left me faceless on the highway in Chilapa, and I was not surprised. I expect such things from armies. Sometimes in my darkened bedroom I speak to IYY about whether art matters, but he doesn't ever answer and I feel the walls close in. I hear wolf whistles from the yard. I know the feeling of gravel on my cheek as I lie prone in an all-male prison waiting for what might or might not happen. I know the sound of uniforms rustling, of boots unquestioningly marching, and when I wake I think of Chelsea Manning. In times of REM, I get momentarily euphoric, dreaming of the just before death moments of defiance, of fist raised by Carlo Giuliani, by Remy Frass and Rachel Corrie, of how they stand there like slim silhouettes while tanks bear down in 1,000 Tiananmens, but it only lasts a few quick seconds before I'm awakened by the thud of their coffin lids shutting. Then I sit up and throw the quilt off, as if it caused my suffocation, as if it caused these recurrent nightmares, when in truth my biggest fear belongs to daylight, and it's this. Despite the history of middlemen and overseers, despite the long history of authority figures, despite Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and the fact that I can't list their victims, my biggest fear is how still and all I want to trust them. And I'm writing this to remind myself that all through history, it's the authorities who have done the worst things. I'm going to be a little bit more cheerful now with the next one. I'll be
1 minute left there.
Perfect. This is a poem called, it's a poem about how I like women basically and think they're remarkable creatures, but it's called Desire Runs Rings Around Me and I Don't Mind. Women, in your many slanted humours and me in mine, you saunter in on fearless and resourceful feet with your adaptable hands, your appropriate limbs and flexible minds. You hold me as you would a child's hand, a sharp blade, an injured wren, a half-wrung neck, an amulet. You play me like an old accordion, easing out my leather string until like a kite skylarking on its thin strings, despite myself, I sing. Women, you go everywhere to waste like an unlamented wind keening through a rusting gate or a harbour full of empty sails. You just lie at ease and wait. Women, you can ride your fleet-foot ponies roughshod over anything you want and they'll never balk, never falter, never doubt you. Your time has always come. And I know you need me about as much as old news, as a fortune teller's lie, as yesterday's horoscope today. But women, come in and run your rings around me. I won't mind. I love how women know things. I find them wise. And this is what the empty fool in me desires. Thanks very much.
Our next reader is Cal Doyle, and Cal Doyle's poetry has appeared in Stinging Fly, Gorse and Poetry, and obviously The Penny Dreadful, and he lives and writes in Cork. So, Cal Doyle.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Pat. First one I'm going to read is called Forget the Swan. East of where the grey streams split our village into three, I met a swan. He spoke in truths, no doublethink or irony, and he led me to the water and sat me down on the moss. Unfurling the mysteries of the universe and the organic eye, he didn't catch that I didn't care. All I wanted to learn was how to unhook her brassiere without looking the fool or snagging her hair. And then, just to prove that this world is not organic, that there is no other realm, numinous, unseen, I pinned him to the riverbank and I snapped his neck clean. I'm kind of interested in just refrains in terms of recycling meaning, just like relinquishing ownership of a word. This poem is called Echolocator, and I'm also interested in humour. Echolocator. When it became my turn to speak, all that my tongue produced was dust. I hold my cat to this. I wear finery. In moments of clarity, there is no grace. It's just into the jar, the kitten we pace. As I watched the saplings become trees, I found a song my father sung in my mouth. No words, just melody. I am unuttered. On black and white film, we are dressed in a shadow of lace. It sits into the jar, the kitten we pace. I hold my cat still as he becomes. The names of ships that sank on their maiden voyages are not its. I shall name him Castro. Among the flotsam, there were documents that the sea air and salt could not erase. It sits into the jar, the kitten we pace. If it becomes like it was, is, ever shall, I will partake in bloodlettings to appease the vengeful sky god. I am deep ecology. Our feet wet in the sand at night, there was a lantern we would always chase. It sits into the jar, the kitten we taste. When my memory becomes like my tongue, dust, effluvial, sunken, and pure melody, please, on sand, draw the Batavia for me. With your hands, remember the contours of my aging face. We slip into the light, your fingers displace. The next poem is about anthropomorphic horses and capitalism and the effects that consumer culture has on us as we fetishize objects that could potentially fetishize us in return as soon as we void ourselves of our nonsense that we kind of hold on to as humans. Goodbye, horses. In the end, we would become more than horses, more than hindquarters to be slapped and brushed by menfolk, only 5 foot nothing tall, or projected into monitors to implicitly embody the sensation one feels when drinking tins of moderately priced supermarket lager, or smoking that first cigarette in the amber light of 8 o'clock in the morning, or slipping into your denim trousers after you and your secretary fucked one another senseless in some motel room 6 miles outside of town in the middle of a workday afternoon. No, we learned to speak your alien tongue. Our teeth stopped growing endlessly into the roofs of our mouths. We became productive and made shapes towards your towns, your cities, your polycentric urban agglomerations, and rose steadily from the menial to the skilled to the executive classes in your economy of all fun, no mercy. We began to fuck missionary, and we took cocaine like we took your currency. There were, of course, foals and babies, fences, gardens, and sprinklers. It all became very dull and whinny. Some took to painting, some to sculpture, some to poetry, some to swingers clubs, some to knitting, some to cleansing. Fences spread, enclosed, defined. We felt the world was ending. Then you began to implicitly embody. The last poem I'll read is called Spirit Guide Animal Dream Poem. It's just basically kind of like an expression of alienation and kind of disgust at certain categories of male Irish poets. Spirit Guide Animal Dream Poem. Oh, it's legit, like, totally legit. That you take a patch of vellum and fly to France to soak up the old man's final utterance and stitch the sponge into a page without a glance through his stout black looking glass. Or consider barrels of ink sacrificed to the currents of a river, where on the banks we pull arrows from a quiver and impale fish so fat that we fire the shots blind. Forgive us, fathers, for we have sinned. The goat's throat slit, its carcass skinned. Of course, passers-by are invited to take the plunge, pinch their quills and go for a swim. Hamlet's revenge was paced not for fear or God, but for his cringe at our spurious gestures. Or forged selves find their ideal mates in those acrylic tides and swelling waves that break on a catalogue of pretty empty shells, which scream when sucked upon by receding waters. We have sinned for us, so please, no forgiveness, fathers. Our spliffs are skinned by your disrobed daughters. We sat next to Aisling as she shaved her head in front of an obsidian mirror. Her curls a blood rust red on the floor, arranged as some inscrutable code. And when we spoke, our mouths filled with spent rounds, and your spirit guide animal dream poem lost all known nouns, kissed us to sleep, transgressed your bounds, and we awoke on a foreign beach, restored with our sisters or brethren. Sin for us, fathers, please, we have forgiven. Your coffin is measured, the nail is driven. Thanks very much.
Righto, thank you, Gal. Our next poet is Elaine Cosgrove. So Elaine Cosgrove is from County Sligo. Her work has been published in The Penny Dreadful, obviously, The Behemoth, New Binding Press, Word Legs and Colony. Most recently, she was the featured poet in the Stinging Fly magazine. And in 2015, she was chosen as part of the Poetry Ireland Introduction Series. So, Elaine Cosgrove.
How are you all doing? Thank you to Penny Dreadful and Cork Spring Poetry Festival for inviting me down. I love Cork City so much. Okay, so I thought I'd start off with an ode to the teenage disco, considering it's Valentine's Day this weekend. I presume most of us have been to a teenage disco at some stage in our lives. It's a beautiful arrangement. Okay, so this is called Bog Disco. It should have been the old bloomeries of love during the slow sesh, disco lights like Morse code baubles roaming our sequins, skirts and shirts, with some smart aleck 2 plastic parish seats away from me belches and says, boom, it's the erection section. So I make tracks swift, double door, into a true breather of a night, the plough, dazzling points floating in the sky. The next poem is, I was kind of, when I was gathering my poems together for tonight, decided to kind of do them around the theme of like codes or music or, you know, coded messages and so on. So this is called Motorway. And it's for anyone who's drove or been on the bus from Galway to Dublin on the motorway. It starts as a communication, 4 trees in an arc-like bough on a hillside in the sun. Through their branches, a society of brightness, almost pink, pierces, and we become a cellar lit alive in a neat second of concrete awe. Go out into the small towns, big cities, and the immeasurable world, as sure, as changeable as the scenes that swiftly pass these windows, riding the seemingly direct waterway. And as they hurtle by, see the faint face of yourself stare back, wanting to disappear. Okay, so the next poem is called Bass Guitar, and it was in Behemoth. And it's basically, I guess, a life history of bass guitars in my life, because I used to play the bass guitar, not anymore, but I still listen to a lot of music that has bass. So bass guitar. My first one, a cheap one bought in Cranmore, was stolen from the trades club by boyos and speed and too much time. Leon saw some of its flesh like shrapnel on Rockwood Parade. But my second one, the second one, a Phil Lynott black key bass, mirror plate to go with leather pants and cap coal eyes played magic. The stage lights blow up, splinter flash and racks of young faces. Hearts chambers boom in the ambassador, bass clef springs alive. Lunchtime, April Saturday, in a high-rise block. Partner holds a hammer outside locked, spare single room. Polish kids play with their new words out on the green. The ice cream van comes around, match of the day jingles. The hammerman is having a panic attack. The Pina in her ear waits for the bang, cracking the rosewood frets, the maple neck, the alder body. 50s hits, parents' bedroom, and nothing to do summer Saturdays. The house, all to my sister and me, dancing on imaginary street corners of American diners. Dax hair and oversized shirts mimic the steel pluck of speaker strings. The doo-wop purity of only you, only have eyes for you. In the still of the night, blue moon, earth angel is satin in the pits of our stomachs. Yeah, I guess I'll keep it with the growing up, which seems to have the growing up theme, which seems to have come through the page at the moment. It's called We Become, and I guess it's a remake of a poem that I've been editing for quite a long time, and so this is it at its present moment. We become. We became adults on roads, on lines you cannot zoom. We became older in the sear of the city, decibels in metered hope. We became in spite of all that happened, and now we are here. We become no matter the distortion that hopes to break our hearts. We become electric again and again and again. This is a new poem. I have a collection and a pamphlet ready to be published if there's any publishers. So this is from another collection I started just this January, and it is, I guess, inspired by a documentary I saw on Netflix called Village at the End of the World, I think it was the name of it, about people living in Greenland. So it's called Land of the Midnight Sun in the Hamlet. They come out in the dark for food. A shot, fat narwhal is dragged through its own blood. Villagers follow a rope until it is into the electric light. The older woman says, in the time of darkness, a shaman came to the village to tell stories about hermits, how the sound of the ice moving was the spirit of the shore screaming, how the darkness is just a part of the road. Children make little faces on lollipop sticks to welcome the sun back in the time of the ice. When the sun comes back, all dogs howl to it, and games are played in the broad daylight. They make tupelics to release the enemy inside them. This man uses seal skin and makes a dog with a headpiece out of walrus tooth. So the next poem was in The Stinging Fly. I think Billy's here. Billy was the editor of the Stinging Fly issue that I was in. I was really happy to have the privilege of being asked to be in The Stinging Fly. And this is an experimental piece, I guess. It's I'd love to say that I wrote it, but I didn't really, because it's an interview with a survivor of the industrial school, one of the industrial schools here in Cork, an interview I did with her, and it was put through an online kind of recording device, and what came back was so not at all what she had, the straight script of the app, but it was really poetic. So I was like, I'm just going to lift that and turn it into a poem. So it's called Recording, and it's I took a Richard Brautigan quote that says, "All watched over by machines of loving grace." Because we're looking at straight messages, customs, the results are in once the companies don't get you. Instead, you're 30 and on knees, gains in the unsung charms. And they also mentioned this is the only incident with a certain stranger who will give you in. I get nothing else. I will exchange. I will keep on boasting strengths. First statements, I hope so. I decided to go to America and start over with windless coals. I cannot find the article you sent my youngest in the United States. You thought that the East Coast night, aching Boston scripts, which I developed to remain, and I was strongly in my body. The similarity between the geographic news, meeting times, lakes, mountains, and emotions, not much. Just think about agriculture and windshields, and I would be traveling to me. I came across all in the heart, which where things unseen turn at the center, is true what you are when you low. The snow, look at the snow involved in building some concrete national parks, in hardening and to some extent in magicking site charms, deserts and a garden spot moves on. So I think I'll call you and you stand in your own thing, and I just saw it move, I think, listening what is now great tourist gaze. Okay, I'll leave it there, I won't read the whole piece because it's quite long and I'm conscious of other quotes time. So I'll just finish with a quick litany. Just like to say thanks to everyone involved in the festival for having, and I look forward to hanging out with everyone else afterwards. So it's called That Which Keeps Us Living. That which keeps us living is the sweat of sex, is a message on your phone wishing you a happy birthday, is the purr of a kitty cat on your lap teasing out imagined tangles with soft claws, is words from someone older that you admire saying, it's okay, you're okay, is the bang of coffee brewing in cafes on Main Street in the morning, is a compliment from a stranger in a fashion retailer, is the third entertainment of a great film, is the intimacy of a person you're getting to know telling you about their latest love. Is the silence you are allowed to cubby hole your thoughts into safer places? Is the cool of a newly bought shirt on clean, hot skin? Okay, thanks very much.
Right, so our next poet is Róisín Kelly, and Róisín's poems have appeared in The Stinging Fly, Poetry, Bare Fiction, and the Baltimore Review, and apparently the Penny Dreadful. More work is forthcoming in Banshee and in the Best New British and Irish Poets by iWare in 2016. So, Róisín Kelly.
Hi on the time. Thanks to Marc and Keithan for having me, and to Pat and Jen for putting on such a great festival yet again. I booked flights to Amsterdam last night for 4 nights. I've always wanted to be there for when the cherry blossoms start to come out there. They have a sort of Japanese cherry blossom festival over there, so I think I'll catch it. This poem is called Amsterdam. I wrote it a while ago, not last night. I decide for us a city in which to fall in love. Nothing lasts, but while it does, it should be the yearly eruption of blossom trees. From trams, passengers watch a pink snow they can't touch. Sun hammers the glass and makes the carriages so hot, sliding over the tracks. Behind windows, women pose in their underwear like museum exhibits, blowing kisses. On every corner, steps lead down to smoky cafes that smell of our first evenings together, but it's even hotter down there. How late is too late to find our way back to those light-headed days? Houses by green canals have dark eyes that watch us. Houses and water are as still as each other. A bird sings in a tree from behind a lace curtain, its petals glazed by the sun so they already seem old ahead of tomorrow's decay. The canals flicker with face after face, like thoughts of long-gone reflections. Smoke and women behind windows fall through the sieve of evening and become timeless dust. And in the tallest house, behind the highest window, a girl writes her name in the grime of a sill, then lifts her finger to blow away particles that sunlight from another world makes golden. Next one is called Taiwan. I nearly followed a guy to Taiwan last year, and I'm glad I didn't. This is a kind of made just a sort of imagining of the consequences of that in a metaphorical way. You were the Buddha I bowed to on the cold stone floor of my life. That was paradise. My forehead pressed to your statue's feet, I honored your temple's silence as you stared at the shadows above me. Praying with incense and oil, I still longed for the fruit of the doorway's sunlit promise, white beaches and whispering forest. Day and night I listened to the ocean's caverns, where water poured through water below a sliced green surface. But my feet never knew the cold shock of the South China Sea. My wrists were never blessed by pink blossoms. You never kissed me below that wild foreign sun. I left by a different doorway, a damp passage that led towards darkness, feeling my way by carvings cut deep into the stone. There is old and there is old, like the gorse-scorched hills of home, where I emerged barefoot, alone, and crowned with a twist of the hawthorn's white flowers. I'm going to read some depressing religious poems. This is called Tarred and Feathered. Where my parents come from, Catholic girls who dated British soldiers were stripped naked and smeared with tar, caught in a snow of feathers from a shaken bag, tied to lampposts and left there until morning. Soft white feathers, mothers slicing for golden roasted meat at their scrubbed kitchen tables. Clocks ticking, red bulbs glowing before all those sacred hearts. Where did the punishers tell their mothers they were going? A girl tarred and feathered and tied to a post can still be beautiful, lamplight easing onto her as if she's been painted as a saint. Then I moved to Galway and everything looked like a painting to me. The sharp grey cloud of cathedral, the string of amber beads that lit up Nimmo's Pier at night. But the girls I knew there came from somewhere else, a country of silver purity rings and marriage at 23. To them, it didn't matter that I turned my cladder ring upside down for him, the crowned heart pointing inwards to my hand. Their eyes coated every bit of me with black, so all the world's bad things would stick. Their smiles had all the softness below a mother bird's wings, and knowing me as well as any mother, they strung me up at Nimmo's Pier, where I liked to sit alone at night. They never fully understood that either, and left me there, tied to the last lamp. Behind me, cars crossed Wolfetone Bridge. Peaceful houses lined the long walk. Glowing curtains hid whole nests of families. I was frozen, my eyes glued to the dark void of ocean. A lighthouse's red warning was afire on the other side of the bay. I could only pray. Kind of on the same theme, this is called Sacred Heart. Just gonna check this one. I watch your spliff's ambered end trace the air as it comes to your lips and leaves again. Against my mascara-smudged pillow, your tanned, bearded face seems sad and exotic. Beyond the window, January's ash flakes away, wet rooftops sweeping its grey light. I don't know how I found my way here. From the wet rocks where I used to watch the red blink of Ackle's lighthouse, or from my mother's kitchen where a red bulb always burns before the Sacred Heart. She's inked the names of her children below Jesus as a prayer for our protection. Already I think your name will be forever written below my own heart in pale gold, although something tells me our children will remain unnamed and unformed, like sea creatures birthed on the crest of a wave. I dream of walking the beach at night, barefoot over the tar-black sand and the tide hissing to nothing at my side. For miles it leaves me babies along the shore, all thin wet limbs and staring alien eyes. In the dark, I find them by the glow of their failing hearts, which beat as dim lamps in each translucent body, and edge their beds of foam with fire. I'll just read one more. This is called The City in Which I Love You. It's about Cork, but it's after Lee Young Lee, who's an Indonesian-American poet. He was a poem by the same name. He's very good. I could go on about him all day. Okay. From Patrick's Hill, I mapped the path we took across our city one morning before dawn from a friend's house on the north side. I remember my heels clacking slowly and the sky turning grey as a dove. We'd stayed up all night smoking on the floor after you seeded my palm with that first tiny, bitter E. That was when I learned what it was to love, though I know less now than I did then. My own body revealed itself to me like a long-lost sister with the same hands, same fingers, same skinny ankles. But she was beautiful, and so were you, reclining against the bed like a lazy king. Love striped itself like neon candy along my spine as, hand in hand, we left that house and stalked our concrete prairie. My heels click into the silence of memory, drowned by late traffic's waterfall. Alone on a hill, I gaze at the mile we walked together from north to south, crossing the split Lee twice. In the cold, black sky sucks at the buildings as if they could breathe for it. A cat leaps a wall and vanishes into a house, whose stained glass porch, its soft lit study of books and pale wood, is as dreamlike a possible life as my lost one. Our path still cut the city in which I loved you and then forgot to. Other lives that are not ours glimmer behind glass. The bells of Shandon and St. Finbarr's begin to ring together from opposite sides of the river, as if each church reassures itself that somewhere in the night there is another. Thanks.
Our final reader in this showcase of the Penny Dreadful is Richard Hawtree, and Richard Hawtree is a medievalist from the United Kingdom, and his translations of Icelandic and German have appeared in the Penny Dreadful magazine. And his most recent poetic award was the 2013-2014 Ovale International 5 Words Challenge competition winner with his poem Matinee Idol. And he also deserves an especially loud a round of applause because he's here tonight from Surrey, the United Kingdom. So.
Thank you. It's great to be here. The first poem I want to read is a translation that I made for the first Penny Dreadful from the German poet Rainer Maria Rilke, and it's his first sonnet to Orpheus. So to find it now. Here we are. Oh, how this tree is risking its crisp height, while Orpheus sings in the ear's high bower, and all grew hushed. But even in that hush rose new creations, blinking into light. Beasts from this stillness, drawn out from the bright, unfettered forest, from their dens and lairs, close in together without guile or pain, and softly, with receptive ears, remain. Their ragings, roarings, raspings ceased, in hearts transfixed. Here even barest wattle would resound, a dwelling house from darkest wishes wound. Orpheus makes the gate posts tremble, and from the inner ear constructs his temple. Now the second poem I'd like to read is called Helping Syllables. And it's about Stockholm, but it's about that phenomenon in Irish where you say column, but it's spelt column, and Stockholm, even potentially, or film. So it's about the helping syllable. And each line in the poem, the idea is that each line adds a syllable. So it's all rather strange. Helping syllables. When the Shawno singers strayed northward, they added their own helping syllables to each rime-dusted palace and Wi-Fi point. So when they steered homeward in their top-heavy ship, frothing with spirit and herring for ballast, those live and glittering mariners saw this, a green light shifting with lengthened tongues out in the archipelago. How they gazed as each macron blade tip stirred the Eddic waters of Stockholm. The next poem I'd like to read, all very disordered here, in her flashy flip-flops. So it's a slightly lighter note, and it's based on an ancient Greek poem by Anacreon. Now, Anacreon liked to write a great deal about drinking wine, and he also liked to write a great deal about all of the young ladies that were his potentially, except that he was getting a little bit on the older side. So this poem is called In Her Flashy Flip-Flops, and it sort of transmutes the Anacreon poem to a beach scene. So he's going on his sort of bucket and spade expedition. One knowing flicker of his golden hair, and the god of love comes clattering down, with, of all things, a russet beach ball, calling me out to play catch with some young one. In her flashy flip-flops, she is as well put together as a temple on Lesbos. Yet she's noticed my own grey streaks. So I haven't a chance, as her footwork stirs the next woman to dance. Finally, well, no, not entirely finally, we have Dinnegad's Housecoat, which is based on an early Welsh poem. It's meant to be a lullaby, but it's rather warlike. Well, you will see. Daddy has been going hunting. So it's called Pash Dinnegad in the original, and I've called it Dinnegad's Housecoat. Dinnegad's housecoat, hear how I cut it, calls in its stoat snug pelt, wish, whist, whiver. Dinnegad's housecoat, see how I spun it, finer than the 7 tongues of slaves bound yet singing. So when your daddy, Hush Dinnegad, struck out hunting club and spear, set to work briskly from hand and shoulder, how your father's dogs snapped, gist, grist, gravel, as Papa skewered fish scales from his tanned coracle, as a lion swipes a tiger moth. On those fells, too, our stalker snatched stag, pig, or craggy roe. He'd even snaffle dappled upland grouse, or a Derwent salmon cloaked in a waterfall. Those beasts your daddy shushed in hand, splintered with his shrewd point, had no pulse, whether wild cat or boar or fox, they'd need to force a wing flash as bold as an eagle's to reel away from Daddy's hunting course. And finally, I have a poem here on theme of Sappho. And there is a story that in the 11th century, one of the popes decided it would be a good idea to burn all of the surviving manuscripts of Sappho's poetry. I have no idea how this might have been the case, but it's a Renaissance story. It didn't happen. They're trying to explain textual transmission, and the fact that we don't have very much Sappho, this was one way of explaining it, that there was a big bonfire. So I've written a poem imagining what it would be like to experience this event. It's called At the Burning of Sappho's Poems, AD 1073. Flames wave like dark curls loosened by island girls, each rounded ink trace slipping free with carnal sighs. Tongues of light tease the margins of taut calf skin. Sappho is ablaze, her offshore lips sizzling and spitting into owl laps. Charred strophes settle on amice and dalmatic, while sparrows scatter to their moonlit roosts.
Thank you, Richard, Elaine, Róisín, Cal, and Sarah. Thank you, everyone, for coming to the brief snapshot of the poetic content of the Penny Dreadful magazine, which is on sale here tonight, incidentally. Is this upside down? No. Okay. Issue 6, which features both Richard Hawtree and Róisín Kelly, is on sale outside along with issue 5. If you'd like any back issues, of which there are several, then you can find them on our website. We're currently open for submissions for issue 7 of the Penny Dreadful, and we'll be open for those until the second weekend of March, so the Sunday the 12th of March, exactly midnight. And so thank you to Pat and Jen for having us at the festival. Sorry about everyone being late. And thank you all for coming, and bye shit.
The first 2 times I went to see Liam O'Murrah, the Irish language poet, read, the poet he was paired with, and for some reason on each occasion he was paired with the same poet, went on for so long that Liam O'Murrah actually never reached the lectern, and I never got to hear him read on those 2 occasions. The poet he was reading with will remain nameless, but he was notorious for saying 4 times after about 20 poems, just 3 more poems now, just 3 more poems. We actually have a sniper in the corner there, trained for shooting anybody who does that. I want to commend poets for having kept within their professional time limits during the course of the reading. It's great for poets to leave us wanting more of them, and as Mark has pointed out, Penny Dreadful is for sale outside. That's the way you'll get more of them. €7 is a very reasonable price. It's an extremely brave thing to present and keep going a literary magazine without an institution behind you. It's an excellently designed magazine, and it's an excellently curated magazine, and I recommend it wholeheartedly. And because the event started on time and ended on time, we had time to socialise, network, gossip and carouse in between events, and I encourage you all to do that. Thank you.